Hello. So here's a video about how do we design solutions for an agent which would be reflex based but also would use learning to improve the performance every time it learns. So it's assumed that students do understand the concept of rational agent, P's analysis, properties of task environment, and after going through this video, students will be able to apply the real world application concepts and they would be able to design a solution using model based, reflex based learning agent architecture. So here we take an example of suggestive personalized keyboard agent. So to elaborate more on the problem statement, we can define it as a smart keyboard that suggests words based on users' typing habits, correcting errors and adapting to personal preferences. Let us start with P's analysis. P stands for performance measure, environment, actuators and sensors. The parameters over which we can analyze performance of the agent it runs every time could be the typing speed, the accuracy of suggestions, user satisfactions, while as the environment would contain the user typing in different contexts like apps, the different languages, slangs, abbreviations, the various keyboard layouts, the time sensitive interactions. Actuators would be screen on which the data would be typed out, and there could be one or more sensors we can consider, and accordingly the agent would go on learning. To elaborate more on performance measure, we could consider some scale and depending on how it performs and the various parameters, we can assign the agent some rewards and penalties so that after execution we'll be able to figure out if the agent ran properly or not. Here are properties of task environment. The agent might be partially observable as it doesn't know the full sentence or the context in which the users might be typing. It would be stochastic as even if the same word sequence is typed, the further auto-completed word might be totally different based on different contexts and the outcomes might be uncertain. Each typing session would be sequential as the sentence would contain multiple words and the next word would depend on the previous word or the context. The environment might be dynamic as based on the user behavior, new slang, different contexts or external factors might come in. The number of percepts, states and actions might be finite and hence it would be discrete and not continuous. And the keyboard suggestive agent would be the only agent working in the current environment. So let us go through both the diagrams one by one. This is the diagram of model based reflex based agent architecture, and let us go through the sample contents of every block for this one followed by the architectural diagram of the learning agent. So to see the sample contents of how the world evolves, it would contain the words and the contextual information. It might contain the word frequencies changing over time. It might contain the contextual phrases, the dependencies of multiple words, the device and input method variations, and also some external factors such as different apps influencing language usage, etc., and so on. So, these are some of the parameters which can elaborate how the suggestions of the word changes with or without the agent. The sensors, as we have elaborated earlier, there could be some kind of sensors, while as actuators is going to be only screen. The reflex based agent mainly works on the condition action rules, and there could be certain conditions and there could be corresponding actions to the same. So here are some examples of the conditions and actions. Followed by condition action table, the agent has to respond to what my actions do, and from there it is supposed to choose an action. So given this scenario, the agent is supposed to consider the word selection and its correction, then personalization of the typing of the words, then contextual or seasonal adaptations, Also, gesture and swipe recognition. So, considering all these cases, the agent can understand and figure out what all its actions do, and it is supposed to choose one of the actions from the listed table. So, here are some examples of what action should I do now. So probably the user swipes a word but gets incorrect output. Then it has to adjust to swipe to word mapping dynamically and so on. The user switches from English to French, then probably adjust to French predictions and so on. These could be the actions taken by the agent. Alternatively, what action should I do now? Probably in the simplest sense, it could display top 3 word suggestions. It could autocorrect if the confidence is high in the user preference, or provide swipe based input options and so on. Now, looking at the learning agent, as we know, performance element is the agent architecture. In this case, reflex based agent architecture, we have to go through the contents of problem generator, the learning element, different kinds of direct and indirect feedback critics, those would be available for the agent. So performance element, as said earlier, it's going to be reflex based agent that is going to suggest the words based on the current input and app context. The learning element would update the internal word ranking, would modify the performance element so that next time it runs, it would execute with the improved information. It can also work on autocorrect rules, some phrase suggestions based on the feedback, etc. Problem generator is going to generate a problem that does not exist as of now, but it will suggest some scenarios and some outputs to the same, and based on how well they were received or not, it can again modify the learning element, and the performance element can be modified further. So in this case, we can consider that the problem generator can suggest new words, emojis, or correction to test user preferences and so on. The feedback could be received from how many words are accepted, how many are rejected, or how many suggestions were modified and accepted and so on. So from there, if the agent is doing well or not can be computed. The knowledge base would be the internal state. It would store the frequently used word by the person, the user specific abbreviations, app based word preferences, and so on. So, this is how it would adapt to the situation and to the user, and every time it runs, it's going to learn something new. And we can expect that the model based learning agent is going to learn more and more, though it is supposed to react to only reflexes. Here are some examples of the critic. These are some example criteria, and the feedback could be positive and negative, and accordingly the critic can modify learning element can modify the performance element. The performance element is supposed to choose the action that would be performed on the environment, and again we are going to get the feedback through the sensors, and this is how the loop would complete. Thank you.